You are not collapsed. You are not ruined. You are still functioning. But something is quieter than it used to be. Your drive, your memory, your emotions, your sense that time is going somewhere. And the hardest part is that the mind offers a very convenient excuse. It is natural. It cannot be that bad. But natural does not mean harmless. Natural means powerful. And powerful things, used without awareness, do not stay tools for very long. Research now shows that roughly 1 in 5 people who try cannabis will develop some form of dependency. Not everyone, not most people, but 1 in 5 is not a small number, and most of them did not plan for it. Most of them did not even see it arriving. In this video, the owl is going to show you what weed actually does to the brain over time. The specific timeline of recovery most content skips entirely, and what no one explains about why short breaks always fail. Not to shame the plant, not to demonize it, but to give you the one thing that changes everything. The full picture. Here is the truth that most weed content avoids. Weed doesn't become a problem because it is weed. Weed becomes a problem when it becomes automatic, not when it is used with intention, not when it is chosen consciously for a specific purpose, but when it becomes the default response to every state you do not want to be in. Bored. Reach for it. Stressed. Reach for it. Lonely. Reach for it. Cannot sleep. Reach for it. End of the day. Reach for it. No particular reason. Reach for it. At that point, something has shifted. It is no longer a tool you pick up. It is a pattern that picks you up. And patterns, as the owl has shown in previous videos, do not respond to motivation. They respond to understanding, structure, and time. This is why the question is never, is weed good or bad? The question is, do you choose it, or does it choose you? Here is a simple test. Stop for 4 weeks. Not tomorrow, today. No matter what you have coming up, no matter how reasonable the exception sounds. If that feels genuinely difficult, if the mind immediately begins generating reasons why now is not the right time, that response is data, and it is worth sitting with. Now let us go into the neuroscience, because this is where most weed content stops being honest. The active compound in cannabis, THC, binds to specific receptors in your brain called cannabinoid receptors. These receptors are part of the endocannabinoid system, which regulates mood, memory, appetite, and sleep. THC mimics a natural neurotransmitter your brain already produces. When THC arrives, it triggers a significant release of dopamine in the brain's reward circuit. The effect is predictable, fast, and reliable, and the brain learns very quickly to associate the ritual with the relief. Not just the substance, the ritual, the time of day, the smell, the sequence of actions, the familiar setup. All of it becomes a trigger. But here is the layer that explains the flatness most long-term users eventually describe. The brain has specific neural circuits dedicated to the experience of novelty. Their function is to signal excitement and reward when you encounter something new or interesting. THC activates those circuits artificially. This is why, in the early stages of use, ordinary things can feel unexpectedly alive. A familiar street, a mundane task, music that you have heard 100 times, all of it arriving with a quality it does not usually carry. But with regular use, the brain compensates. Those novelty circuits downregulate, and over time, something that most users do not connect to their habit begins to happen. The capacity to feel genuine novelty while sober diminishes, not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually. The world begins to require more stimulation to register. Experiences that should feel interesting, feel ordinary. Travel, events, conversations, achievements, things that should move you, arrive flat. Not because those things became less significant, but because the circuit that processes their significance has been progressively suppressed. The endocannabinoid system also adapts more broadly. With daily use, the receptors downregulate. The brain produces less of its own natural endocannabinoids because the external supply has been doing that work. The result is a baseline that operates below where it was designed to function. Motivation requires more effort to access. Emotions arrive at a lower volume. Memory is foggier. The sense that time is going somewhere quietly fades. This is not moral failure. This is a system that adapted to an external input it was never designed to receive chronically. There is a second layer that almost no one discusses: weed and sleep. Most daily users believe weed helps them sleep, and in the short term, that is partially true. THC does reduce the time it takes to fall asleep, but here is what it does to the sleep itself. THC suppresses REM sleep. REM is the stage where the brain consolidates memory, processes emotional experience, and conducts the neurological maintenance that makes the next day function properly. When REM is chronically suppressed, memory consolidation suffers. Emotional processing is incomplete. The brain wakes up having slept, but not having rested in the deeper sense. This explains something that many daily users notice but rarely connect to the weed. The dreams stop, or become very rare, and when they return in the early days of a break, they come back vivid, intense, and sometimes overwhelming. That is the REM system catching up on the processing it was unable to complete. It is not a side effect of quitting. It is evidence of what was being suppressed. Now here is what happens to the rest of your life when the pattern runs long enough. Most people who develop a serious dependency do not notice the accumulation while it is happening, because in the early stages, life changes by itself. New environments, new relationships, new experiences. The outside world provides momentum, and the habit runs alongside it. But over time, something subtle occurs. The habit begins to organize the life around it. Weekends shift toward activities compatible with use. Hobbies that require presence and energy quietly drop away. Social invitations get declined more often than accepted. Ambitions that required sustained effort get deferred to a future that keeps moving forward. Weed, used chronically, does not make you weaker. It builds something around you. A comfortable shell that softens difficulty without resolving it. The anxiety is quieter inside the shell. The loneliness is more bearable. The emptiness of an unproductive day is easier to accept. But the shell does not make you more capable of facing those things. It makes you less practiced at it. And less practiced means more dependent on the shell. The relationships in your life feel this before you do. Partners who feel the distance. Friends who notice that plans keep changing. A social circle that quietly contracts around the people who share the habit rather than the people who know you best. And here is what makes weed dependency particularly quiet in its damage. It does not announce itself. Unlike substances with more dramatic consequences, weed allows you to keep functioning at a level that feels acceptable while the gap between where you are and where you could be widens slowly. The version of you that was more present, more motivated, more willing to be uncomfortable for long enough to grow. That version does not disappear. It recedes. Now here is the layer that makes the 90-day reset categorically different from a few days off. Weed dependency is not primarily chemical. Yes, the endocannabinoid system needs time to recover, but the deeper dependency is threefold. It is routine. It is identity. It is emotional coping. And none of those three shift in 3 days or 2 weeks. The routine layer is why the trigger system is so persistent. The same time of day, the same location, the same emotional state, the same people. Every one of these cues has been conditioned to predict and activate the craving, even when the chemical craving has reduced. This is why someone can feel fine for 10 days and then walk into a specific environment and feel the pull return immediately. Not because the dependency came back, because the trigger pathway was never addressed. The identity layer is why most people underestimate the difficulty. For many daily users, the habit is not just something they do. It is part of how they understand themselves. Creative, relaxed, someone who winds down this way, someone who connects with people this way. When the substance is removed, a question arrives that nobody warned them about. Who am I in the evening without this? What do I do with this much time? How do I relax now? These are identity questions, and they cannot be answered in 3 days. The emotional coping layer is perhaps the most significant. Weed was solving a problem. For many people, the problem was anxiety. For others, it was the inability to quiet a restless mind. For others, it was loneliness, or boredom, or the weight of things that never got properly processed. When the coping mechanism is removed, those things do not disappear. They surface, and the first few weeks of a reset are often experienced not as freedom from weed, but as unwanted confrontation with everything the weed was gently managing. This is not a crisis. This is exactly what needs to happen, because the feelings that surface are survivable, and the evidence that they are survivable is the most important data you can give your nervous system. Now here is the specific timeline, and this is where most content leaves you completely unprepared. The 3-3-3 OWL method maps. 3 thresholds of transformation. 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. Not arbitrary numbers. Each one marks a neurological and psychological shift that research and experience consistently confirm. And inside each threshold, there is a relapse window that almost no one explains. This is what the OWL is going to show you now. The first 3 days. The shock threshold. The first relapse window lives here, and it is the most commonly expected one. Physical withdrawal symptoms are at their peak here. Irritability that arrives without warning. Restlessness that has no comfortable position. Nausea and appetite disruption. Sleep that resists arriving no matter how tired you are. Mood swings without the usual cushion. Headaches, sweating, difficulty concentrating. Most people during this window are not eating properly because of nausea. They are not sleeping. And when you combine poor sleep with disrupted nutrition and the full force of physical withdrawal, the system looks for the fastest available relief. And the fastest available relief is the thing you just stopped. Your only mission in this window is not to feel good. It is to stay clean, hydrate, walk, sleep early, eat simply. Remove the tools and triggers from your immediate environment and tell yourself one thing when the urge arrives. I do not have to feel good. I just have to stay clean. 3 to 5 days. That is the first threshold. That is the first door of the 3-3-3. Something important happens around day 4. Research suggests that the specific cannabinoid receptors most affected by THC begin returning to normal sensitivity within approximately 4 days of stopping. This means the neuronal changes in the brain respond faster than most people realize. But receptor recovery is only one layer, and it is the shallowest one. The first 3 weeks, the rewiring threshold. The second relapse window lives here, and it is the one almost no one warns you about. Many people who successfully navigated the first days fall here. The acute physical symptoms have passed. You are sleeping again, though not perfectly. Life feels manageable, but the emotional withdrawal is now at its peak. Anxiety without its cushion. Emotions that swing without apparent reason. A flatness that is different from the initial withdrawal. Quieter, but more pervasive. The social situations that used to be easy now require more effort than expected. The evening that used to be filled now has a silence that takes some learning to inhabit. And crucially, the cravings that arrive in this window do not feel like the desperate cravings of withdrawal. They feel like reasonable suggestions, the old patterns presenting themselves as options rather than as compulsions. This subtlety is what makes week 2 more dangerous than the first few days. The first few days feel like war. Week 2 feels like negotiation, and negotiation with the old pattern is where most resets end. Do not negotiate. Replace. The first 3 months, the identity threshold. The third relapse window lives here, and it is the most counterintuitive one of all. At 30 days, many people feel genuinely good, better than they have in months, clearer, more energetic, more confident. And that feeling generates a thought that is so common, it might as well be part of the pattern itself. I made it 30 days. I proved I can stop. I can celebrate. This is not recovery speaking. This is the addictive voice using your progress against you. Because here is what the research shows about the 30-day mark. THC, stored in fat cells, can still be detectable in the body up to 90 days after stopping. You may still be going through an active physical detox at 30 days. Your endocannabinoid system, which regulates mood, sleep, appetite, and motivation, is somewhere between 2 weeks and 1 month into its rebalancing process. 30 days is not the finish line. 30 days is roughly the halfway point of the chemical recovery, and it is nowhere near the beginning of the behavioral and identity recovery. Stopping at 30 days is like leaving a repair halfway through because the worksite looks better than it did when you started. The structure is not yet sound. The 90-day threshold. This is where the 3 layers of the 3-3-3 OWL method converge. This is where the research and experience consistently confirm what the method was always pointing toward. 90 days is the minimum point at which all 3 layers, chemical, behavioral, and identity, have had sufficient time to begin shifting together. By 90 days, the endocannabinoid system has largely rebalanced. New behavioral patterns have had enough repetitions to begin forming. The identity has accumulated enough evidence to start updating its conclusions. But the OWL wants to be honest with you about something that most content in this space does not say clearly. 90 days is the beginning of the real recovery, not the end of it. The deeper research consistently suggests that a full year is the horizon at which genuine healing becomes complete. A year for the brain to fully recalibrate. A year for new habits to become identity rather than effort. A year to discover what your life actually looks like when the pattern is no longer organizing it. If 90 days sounds like a long time, the OWL asks you to consider something. That voice telling you 90 days is too long. That is the pattern speaking, not you. Call it what it is, and choose beyond it. Here is what the OWL offers you as a practical framework. You do not need to decide today whether you are quitting forever. The 90-day reset makes only one demand: 3 months of not choosing it by default. After that, if you return with evidence. Evidence that you can tolerate boredom without it. Evidence that you can sleep without it. Evidence that you can be anxious without it and survive. Evidence that you can be yourself in a room without needing an altered state to feel comfortable. That evidence changes the relationship permanently, even if you choose to use again, because you will know, in a way you cannot know without the data, that it is a choice, not a necessity, a tool, not a master. One more thing. If you use daily and you are thinking right now that you do not want to stop forever, the OWL is not asking you to. The OWL is asking you one question. If you cannot stop for 90 days, who is actually in control? That question is not a judgment. It is a doorway, and the answer to it is more valuable than any high you have ever had from the substance itself. You are not weak. You are conditioned, and anything conditioned can be rewired. If this video gave you something real, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe to the OWL's Burrow, so the next descent is waiting when you are ready. The OWL will see you there.